It began with a fog that wasn't like any other, thick, almost oily in its density, creeping over the small town of Marrow's Edge each autumn. The locals whispered that this fog was no natural weather phenomenon, but the herald of something otherworldly. Every year, as the leaves turned blood red and the chill crept into the bones, a dense fog rolled in from the moors. At first, it was just a picturesque, eerie mist that blurred the edges of reality. But then, people started disappearing. First, it was old Mr. Davis, who walked his dog at dusk and never returned. Then a group of teenagers, lost on an impromptu adventure, vanished as they entered the shrouded outskirts of town. The fog swallowed them whole. For Sarah, a local journalist with a skeptical mind and a courageous heart, the mystery became personal when her younger brother, Liam, joined the ranks of the missing. Determined to uncover the truth, she armed herself with a tape recorder, a digital camera, and an insatiable need for answers. Night after night, she roamed the fog-bound streets. Every step in the clammy haze felt like a step into another realm, a world where the familiar turned alien, where each whispered breath of wind seemed to carry secrets too monstrous to name. During one harrowing night, Sarah encountered a shape in the mist, a figure, tall and gaunt, drifting silently near the edge of an abandoned railway line. Its movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic. The figure turned slowly to face her. Its eyes, when they caught the meager light, were deep pools of despair and hunger, as if it had witnessed centuries of sorrow. In that moment, Sarah felt a crushing loneliness, a terror that she was now a part of an ancient cycle of disappearance. The figure extended a skeletal hand, as if beckoning her deeper into the swirling gloom. The next morning, the town awoke to yet another tragedy. Another family had vanished, their home left abandoned, the dining table still set for dinner. No trace of struggle, no note of explanation, only the impenetrable fog lingering as if in mourning. The local authorities, overwhelmed and desperate, could offer no explanation beyond superstition and fear. Sarah's investigation led her to the town's oldest records, where she uncovered a legend. Centuries ago, a sorrowful spirit had been cursed to wander, collecting lost souls in its relentless search for redemption. With each disappearance, the curse deepened, and the spirit's presence in the fog grew stronger. Was this entity trying to complete an ancient ritual, or was it merely a tragic relic of a forgotten past, doomed to repeat its own demise by claiming the living? In the final confrontation on a night when the fog was thicker than ever, Sarah ventured to the old cemetery, where the spirit was said to have been laid to rest. Amid rows of crumbling tombstones and a silence that suffocated, she confronted the spectral figure one last time. With a voice trembling between resolve and terror, she demanded answers. In response, the fog thickened, and she felt a cold, relentless pull, a force that wanted to erase her very existence. The line between reporter and victim blurred as she was dragged into the darkness, her final words a desperate whisper, "I won't let you have us all." The town of Marrow's Edge still struggles with the curse of the fog. Every autumn, when the fog rolls in, the residents lock their doors and whisper prayers. And sometimes, when the night is silent, a lone figure can be seen wandering the empty streets, a reporter forever chasing the truth, caught in the endless loop of the vanishing fog. Nestled on a crooked street in a forgotten suburb was the house on Briar Lane, a mansion that had seen better days, but carried an air of oppressive dread that no amount of modern renovation could erase. Once the home of a reclusive family, rumored to have dabbled in the occult, The mansion now stood as a monument to decay and despair. When Elena, a young historian specializing in local folklore, first heard the whispers about Briar Lane, she dismissed them as mere superstition. Drawn by a fascination with abandoned structures, she secured permission to document the mansion's history. But as soon as she crossed the threshold, the house seemed to come alive. Faded portraits lined the walls, their subjects' eyes following her every move. The wooden floorboards creaked as if in pain, echoing the long-forgotten memories of sorrow. Each room was a time capsule of misery. In the parlor, a grand piano sat silent, yet exuded a lingering melancholy, its keys chipped and worn. A diary found in a dusty study recounted disturbing rituals, attempts to commune with entities beyond mortal comprehension. The writings hinted at a tragedy that had torn the family apart, a ritual gone horribly wrong, resulting in the loss of their souls and leaving behind an indelible stain on the house itself. As Elena delved deeper, she began experiencing inexplicable phenomena. The sound of soft sobbing echoed from empty corridors at night. Shadows danced in the peripheral vision, always disappearing when looked at directly. One evening, while reviewing her recordings, she heard a distinct whisper, "Join us." The voice was layered with sorrow and malevolence, promising comfort to the lost and condemned. It was as if the house itself was alive, reaching out to those who dared disturb its secrets. Determined to understand the truth, Elena set up a series of cameras throughout the mansion. Over the course of several nights, she captured fleeting images, a door opening on its own, a hand brushing past the lens, and, most terrifyingly, a face contorted in agony, appearing in the reflection of a dusty mirror. Each clip deepened the mystery and her own descent into paranoia. Was the mansion haunted by the tortured spirits of its former inhabitants, or was it a vessel for something far more sinister? The climax of her investigation occurred on a stormy night, when the mansion's history seemed to converge with the present. As lightning illuminated the decaying hallways, Elena followed a trail of cryptic symbols painted in what appeared to be dried blood. They led her to a hidden chamber behind a false wall. Inside, she found a circle of charred candles and an altar bearing the scars of ancient rituals. In the center of the circle, an old mirror reflected not only her trembling form, but also countless ghostly figures, faces of the damned, pleading silently. In that frozen moment, Elena understood. The house was not merely haunted. It was a prison for souls, forever tormented by a failed promise of salvation. The tragic family had attempted to breach the boundaries of life and death, and in doing so, had condemned themselves and any who dared seek their secrets to a fate of eternal wandering. As the spectral figures converged on her, their eyes filled with endless sorrow and rage, Elena's final cry was swallowed by the howling wind outside. Her recordings, left behind in the silence of Briar Lane, serve as a grim testament to the mansion's unyielding grip on despair. Today, the house on Briar Lane stands abandoned, its windows like empty eyes, staring into the void. Locals say that on moonless nights, you can hear the soft strains of a piano and the whispers of those lost souls, inviting unsuspecting wanderers to share in their endless torment. In a city that never truly slept, there stood a dilapidated hospital on the outskirts, a place long abandoned by the living, but, it seemed, not by the restless dead. For years, rumors swirled about a patient who had been admitted during a midnight storm, only to vanish from his bed with no trace or explanation. Dr. Marcus Lee, a seasoned but embattled physician, had always prided himself on his rational mind. However, a series of inexplicable events at the old St. Marek Hospital challenged every principle he held dear. The hospital had been shuttered after a catastrophic incident decades ago, but stories persisted of a lone patient who roamed its corridors, his presence felt by those daring to trespass after dark. Marcus was drawn to these tales, not out of superstition, but from a desire to understand a phenomenon that defied logic. Armed with clinical instruments, a digital recorder, and a sense of determination, tempered by years of medical training, he decided to investigate the hospital's abandoned wings. The moment he stepped through the broken entrance, a heavy silence enveloped him, a silence punctuated only by the distant drip of water echoing through the empty hallways. Inside, the hospital was a labyrinth of peeling paint, rusted medical equipment, and haunting remnants of past lives. In one ward, he discovered a patient's chart left open on a dusty desk. The file detailed a case from the 1970s, a man who had been admitted for a mysterious illness, one that left him in a state of perpetual delirium and seclusion. The notes described episodes of inexplicable behavior, whispering to unseen voices, convulsions that mimicked an internal torment, and an unsettling calm in the moments before his disappearance. His last recorded entry simply read, "He is coming for me." As midnight approached, Marcus felt the oppressive weight of the hospital's history. The building seemed to breathe, its corridors pulsating with memories of pain and regret. He set up a makeshift observation post in what once was an intensive care unit. Hours passed in eerie quiet until a sudden disturbance shattered the silence. A faint shuffle, the creak of a wheel, and then the unmistakable sound of a ragged breath echoed down the corridor. Marcus's heart pounded as he followed the sound, his clinical mind struggling to rationalize the impossible. In a dimly lit room, Marcus finally encountered the midnight patient. A gaunt figure dressed in tattered hospital garb, the man's eyes were vacant, yet burned with an unspoken agony. His skin, pallid and almost translucent, bore the marks of relentless suffering. When Marcus attempted to communicate, the patient's voice emerged as a raspy whisper. "I was betrayed by those I trusted, left here to die." The confession was both a plea and a curse, hinting at a conspiracy buried deep within the hospital's past. As Marcus listened, a horrifying realization dawned on him. The patient's presence was not a ghostly echo of a mind in torment. It was a living embodiment of unresolved injustice. Decades ago, a series of medical malpractice cases had been swept under the rug, sacrificing patients for the sake of expediency and profit. The midnight patient had been the whistleblower, silenced and condemned by a system that valued its secrets above human life. Now, in death, his spirit had been compelled to roam, seeking retribution, or perhaps the acknowledgement of his suffering. The encounter escalated when the patient's form began to flicker, as if caught between two realms. The room grew unbearably cold, and the spectral figure reached out a trembling hand towards Marcus. In that final moment, as the walls of the abandoned hospital seemed to close in with the weight of its hidden sins, Marcus was overwhelmed by an indescribable sorrow and terror. The midnight patient's whispered words became a cacophony. "Remember us. Do not forget." And then, as suddenly as he had appeared, the figure dissolved into the shadows. Marcus fled the hospital that night, the echoes of the patient's plea burning into his mind. In the years since, he has dedicated himself to uncovering the truth behind the hospital's dark past. The recordings from that fateful night remain among the most chilling pieces of evidence, a testament to a man who refused to be silenced, even in death. To this day, locals avoid the ruined saint. Merrick Hospital, fearful that the midnight patient still wanders its halls, waiting to ensure that the sins of the past are never forgotten.